What's your name?
Golden Turpin. We live in Silt, and sometimes I wake up and I can't breathe because how dirty the house is.
When was the last time you had a bath?
I don't know, almost a year ago. I haven't been out. I don't go out much, so I don't know anything about the streets or anything.
You homeschooled?
No, we don't do school. Our mother tells people we're private schools, and she has a fake private school set up. But we don't really do school. I haven't finished first grade, and I'm 17. I don't know much about my mother. She doesn't like us. She doesn't spend time with us ever.
Before there was that 8-passenger bitch, there was David and Louise Turpin. And just like Ruby Frankie, it would take just one incredibly courageous child to sneak out of the hell that they were living in, find help, and rescue the rest of their siblings. This is not an easy story to hear, and the trauma for these children didn't end after their parents' arrest, and I think that's the hardest part to even wrap your head around. In fact, it was magnetized for some of them due to social services not doing their job and placing them in a home that was going to protect them. The one thing that every single child in this world deserves. But the ending is uplifting, and the Turpin children have beat all of the odds, really. So I figured it'd be nice to check in on them to see where they were and where they have come so far. I'm really excited about this video. I hope you guys enjoy it as well. And with that, let's start. Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated. It truly is. Before I get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so because it really helps me out and I really appreciate it. And with that, let's just start. Louise Robinette was born on May 24th, 1968. She is one of 5 siblings. So there's 3 girls with their mom and dad, and then there's 2 half siblings. Growing up, the 3 girls were essayed by their grandfather quite a bit, truly a lot. She was a member of the Bible club growing up, and she sang in the choir. So according to Louise's family, church was the first place that Louise and David would meet. When Louise was just 16 years old, she would fall in love with 23-year-old David Turpin. David was born on October 17th, 1961, and was described as a nerdy boy with a stutter. After graduating from Virginia Tech, Turpin was offered a very well-paying job as a computer engineer at Lockheed Martin. February 11th, 1985, David and Louise elope in Virginia before picking up and moving to Texas. In 1989, when David was 26 and Louise was 20, she would give birth to their first child, a little girl that they would name Jennifer Turpin, who has 115,000 followers on TikTok, shares this picture with the caption that reads, "Happy Easter, everyone. This is a pic from my favorite Easter growing up. It was at a time when things were better. I was 4, but remember this Easter very well. I got a nice basket with a mini gumball machine, my favorite thing in it, and other fun goodies. The day started with church, and then we got to dig through our baskets when we returned home. I hold on to any good memory I can." After Jennifer was born, 12 more Turpin children would follow. And just as a side note, I guess right off the bat, a lot of their identities are still protected. So I will focus mainly on the girls that have spoken up already. And then the rest of the Turpins, they can stay as private as they want for as long as they want. And that's just really the truth of the matter. When Jennifer was 4 years old, she attended Meadow Creek Elementary and recalls showing up to school with unwashed hair and dirty clothes. In a 2020 interview, she says, quote, "I remember wanting to make friends. I remember all of them didn't want to be my friend. Didn't really understand why. They called me Skinny Bones and acted like they didn't want to be around me. I probably smelled, but I didn't realize at the time I smelled. But that stench clings to you. It stays with you because we would literally live in a house piled with trash." And I mean literally piled with trash, mold and everything. And there's no good way to get rid of a smell like that. It was on my clothes, it was on me, and I think that had a lot to do with it. After Jennifer finished the 3rd grade, she was pulled from Meadow Creek and homeschooled. In fact, every Turpin child after her was homeschooled. And I use that word very, very loosely. No Turpin children were going to attend school as long as David and Louise were the ones controlling them. So, it is widely speculated and 100% believed by me that the reason they refused to let the children go to school was because they feared that either someone would spot the children's condition or that the children would tell an adult about what they were enduring on a daily basis. Homeschooling. Homeschooling at the Turpin house was an evil, sad, disgusting joke. Louise would get incredibly angry with Jennifer if she didn't know the answer to something. She would diminish her by telling her that all kids her age knew the answers to these questions before calling her child stupid to her face. Jennifer even talks about a scar that she has on her right hand given to her by her mother because she did not know the answer to something. First memories. In Jennifer's new book, she tells a story about being 2 or 3 years old, walking down the steps to get a glass of water and seeing her father screaming at her mother and punching a hole in the wall with his fist. She also shares that she remembers him not allowing her to speak during fights, would see him, her mother, push her to the floor and throw things at her that included soda bottles, cans, and random things from their dirty ass floor. She's incredibly vocal in her book about her beliefs that her mother was ABUSC by her father so much and for so long that one day she literally just snapped and nothing was ever the same again. To be fair, she does not take away responsibility for the things that Louise Turpin has done, but I do truly believe that she truly believes her father is what made her go over the edge. On top of what a lot of others believe is a combination of what her grandfather did to her and her siblings for all those years combined with David Turpin. The Turpins lived in Fort Worth, Texas from 1992 to 1999. In 2006, Turpins made the children live in a trailer in the back of the property so that they could go live in a motel, go out drinking, and live their parent-free lives. They would bring the kids groceries once a week, but it was never enough food to feed 13 kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At times forcing the children to eat leaves and grass. Jordan Turpin, who was just 6 at the time, says in an interview, quote, "There was a lot of starving, so I would have to figure out how to eat. I would eat either ketchup, mustard, or ice." Yes, as in ice cubes. Jennifer, who was 19 at the time, was left in charge of her 12 siblings. She was instructed to punish the children by putting them in David's makeshift dog kennel and was told that if she didn't punish them in that way, that she would be the one who was forced to go into the cage. In 1999, the Turpins would foreclose on their Fort Worth home. The new homeowners would photograph the home after it was purchased. Inside the home, the carpets were filthy with caked in dirt. There were scratch marks on the back of the door. The once white walls were covered in dirt and filth, and the floor of the shower had black mold on it.
Realtors made you sign a hold harmless agreement before you could even go in and look at it because it was in that bad a shape, and the floor in the bathroom was completely rotted out, and the roof was leaking bad. They had blue tarps on it. Took the mortgage company probably a couple months just to clean everything up to get it presentable to sell in an as-is condition. We probably spent about $30,000 on it. We had to replace all the floors, the sheetrock, heat and air, retextured the whole house, just about remodeled everything. Yeah, there was a lot of old diapers laying around there and stuff. Yeah. A lot of, and like I say, they had moved out of that house and moved into a double wide. They pulled a double wide trailer in back about 300 yards from the house and been living in it when the house had got so nasty. So whenever I've got the house, it hadn't been lived in a couple of years. It got so nasty, they just moved out of it and moved a mobile home in back there.
After leaving Fort Worth, the Turpins went 40 miles north and settled into a 2,300 square foot home on 36 acres in Rio Vista, Texas from 1999 to 2010. So it's said that Rio Vista is so small you can't even see it on a map, really. After settling into their new home, the three oldest children, Jennifer, Josh, and Jessica, would meet and befriend Ashley Vineyard, a neighbor of theirs who's incredibly excited to have new kids on her block around her age. Ashley says in an interview the Turpin kids were allowed to hang out and do kid stuff. Things that included playing in the creek, catching frogs, throwing rocks, and running around like crazy.
I was about 10 years old, and I was friends with Jennifer and Josh and Jessica. I went over and I started talking to them, and we ended up hanging out after that, and we would go and we'd play in the creek that runs by their house. We'd play in their yard. It was just normal kid stuff at first. And then one day I came over and was knocking on the door, and their mom came out and told me that I couldn't play with them anymore. I'd knock and knock and knock and nobody would answer. But I could see the baby, one of the younger girl babies, was in a playpen in the window, and she'd be there for hours, all day, all night, unsupervised. Anytime I'd go over there, she was in that playpen.
Ashley says that the children didn't really talk about their parents, and if you asked them any questions, they would typically just shut down, telling the Daily Mail, quote, "I only met the parents a few times. The mother always dressed modestly. The father had an intimidating presence, but quiet. He never said anything. I only went into their house a couple of occasions. You entered through the back door. I remember there were animal cages and newspapers strewn about the floor, piles with feces on it. They had dogs, cats, and goats. Even though the house smelled of poop at the time, I really didn't think anything about it since we lived out in the country. It was no big deal to have animals in your house. I never went into the kids' bedroom to play. I only got as far as the dining room and kitchen area. Oddly, I remember not seeing any sign of food in the house or any dishes in the sink." Ashley's mother, Shelley, opened up about her interaction with the Turpin kids that would ultimately be the catalyst for their friendship with her daughter coming to an abrupt end, saying, quote, "The Turpin kids rarely came over to our house to play. One day when they came over, I asked them their names, a normal question. One of the girls said to me, I can't tell you our names, but if you listen, you might be able to figure out what our names are. First, I thought she was joking, but later realized that she wasn't. It was at that point I thought something strange was going on in the Turpin house."
The parents, I mean, they came by here and dropped off cupcakes to thank us for helping out and took the kids to some trick-or-treat party they were going to. They would act a little social, but they wouldn't get real social. Ashley was out there with them, and I'm sure her sister was tagging along, Barbara, but she was little. And so I went out there and was like, "Hi, I'm Shelley, and I'm Ashley's mom, and this is her sister Barbara, and she's got a little brother, and told them I had a husband, Ricky, and I said, are y'all from over there? Well, what's y'all's names?" And that's when the older girl was like, well, we're not really allowed to tell anybody our names, but maybe if you pay attention, you'll be able to figure it out. what our names are, you know. And then the younger girl turned around to her and was like, no, don't, you know, like she was going to get in trouble. And, you know, at first I thought the older girl might have been just joking around, being a smarty wrench as a teenager. And then when the other girl said that and the look on her face was pretty terror-stricken, I was like, oh, gee, my stomach just fell out the bottom. Yeah.
One day after this, Ashley went over to the Turpin home to see if they could come and play. Louise answered the door and told Ashley, I'm sorry, they can't come play outside today and they can't play with you anymore. After this, Ashley says the Turpin kids had begun playing in the backyard so that she couldn't see them, but that she could hear them. Then one day, Ashley and Shelley noticed the double-wide trailer in the back of the Turpins' home. They would later find out the Turpins were forced to live in the trailer because the home was unlivable, filled with garbage and feces. They lived in the trailer for about 4 years before packing up and moving to California. After the family left, bill collectors began knocking on Sherry's door. This would be what prompted Sherry to realize that they had moved out of the home. One day, Sherry and Ashley go over to the Turpin home and begin to look around. They open the back door to the house, and as soon as they do, 2 dogs come charging at them. The room smelled of feces. There were empty Vienna sausage cans everywhere, and the dogs were eating dirty diapers for food. This treatment of animals should horrify most people, but because it's Louise and David Turpin, it makes perfect sense that they would treat innocent animals so cruelly. The neighbors go on to say, they had a huge garbage dump at their house and we heard a baby kitten crying. We pulled the baby kitten from the dumpster and kept it. There were other whimpering sounds coming from their property, but we could never find where they came from. Inside the double wide, we found 2 bedrooms with 6 sets of bunk beds like barracks. They were like makeshift mattresses on the bed, and when you tried to lift them up, they would fall apart. There was another room like a makeshift schoolroom. There were about 5 or 6 desks and old beat-up chalkboards leaning against the wall. The chalkboard was dusty and dirty, and there were basic elementary words written on it. Okay, so while we are on the topic of homeschooling, Jennifer addresses in her book about all the spelling and grammar mistakes. As someone who just naturally spots spelling and grammar mistakes, for a girl with a very limited education, if that's even what we're calling it, I guess, she did not do too bad writing and spell checking her memoir, I have to say. I would be incredibly proud of this book if I was her, and I would encourage you guys to go purchase her book, support her story, and get way more details than I'm going to share with you here. And if you do, please come back, leave me a comment, and let me know your thoughts on it. Okay, moving on. I just really want to add that little tidbit of information. Eva Lives Here is a series on Discovery. Louise Turpin's sister, Elizabeth Flores, did an episode of Eva Lives Here to speak about her sister, Louise, and her brother-in-law. She says in the episode that she went to live with her sister and David in Texas when she was still a teenager. She tells a story about how Louise and David left her sitting in the car with the kids for hours while they went into a casino to gamble. She tells stories about how the kids were called down to eat one at a time, starting with Jennifer, who was the oldest. She talks about how they were not allowed to start eating or speaking until they were given permission. Then when they were done eating, that child would go upstairs and the next child would come down. Elizabeth says that she was asked to leave the home because she was talking to a boy after being given specific instructions about how the family was private. Jennifer Turpin says in her book that her aunt's story on that show is not completely true. She says that her aunt came to live with them in Texas for a bit while her mother was in the hospital giving birth to one of her siblings. She says that her father called to check on the children, heard her aunt yelling at one of the siblings, who was around 4 at the time, to get a rag. She goes on to say that because she yelled at the child angrily, she was asked to leave. Could this story be remembered wrong by one of them or both of them? Yes. Could details have gotten misconstrued after years of time and trauma have passed 1,000,000,000%? But nevertheless, this is how Jennifer recalls this time. And given the fact that she holds her parents responsible for the roles they played in what they did to her and her siblings, I'm kind of inclined to believe her. In other words, I don't feel like she gives them any passes unless it's the truth. I do. I feel like she's kind of forthcoming with this is how it was, but when props are needed to be given, she does give them. She's not sugarcoating much of anything in regard to her parents, but at the same time, if she does have a positive memory, she's not above giving her parents credit for it. Elizabeth also tells a story in her episode about going to take a shower one night. She says that while she's in the shower, David and Louise walk into the bathroom. Actually, she says that Louise picks the lock open and then they walk into the bathroom. David begins saying things to her about her body, asking her questions about her body, and making statements about how good she probably is in bed. She says Louise would stand there and laugh with an evil laugh while Elizabeth would cry. Jennifer says in her book that years later, that same aunt would come to visit them with her now husband and children. She says that her parents gave her now uncle permission to spank her with a paddle for no reason at all, and her uncle would say to her father that it would be an honor and that her aunt would stand there smiling. Jennifer says after this, she would do her best to try and avoid her aunt and uncle at all costs. Take it for what you will, I suppose. The aunt that as far as I've seen, she has not addressed this whatsoever. But again, this book literally just came out. I do know that the Turpins had a lot of money troubles. Another sister of Louise by the name Teresa says that Louise called her to tell her that David was driving her to a motel in Huntsville, Alabama, so that she could meet up with a man there that they had just recently met online, so that she could have sex with him while David waited in the car for her. So David drives her to a motel in Huntsville, Alabama. Okay. So my mind originally went to maybe they're doing it for extra money. That's what I thought. That has never even remotely been said, but that's just what I'm thinking. Why else would you do that? The sister claims that they're doing it to like sow their wild oats, which can also be true. But we do know that Louise had a terrible shopping addiction and she would like to buy lots and lots of toys, but actually she would never open a good majority of the toys or allow the kids to play with them. It's just another form of her torture. But it wasn't until she said that this is really weird, and even the sister says this is what was like on the 1 year anniversary, like 1 year to the day, Louise calls her sister back up and she tells her sister that she thinks it is so funny that David is driving her back down to the same motel, that they booked the same room, and that he was going to have sex with Louise in the same exact bed that she had slept with this Huntsville, Alabama man exactly 1 year prior to this. Weird. That's weird. All right, punishments. In terms of punishments, all of the children would suffer punishments at some point in their life. All except the youngest sibling, who was still a baby at the time of the rescue. I think she was like 2. With that being said, Jennifer, being the oldest, not only has the best memory of the ABUSE, but she's also the first and longest victim of David and Louise. Her first memory of this was when her brother wanted a train set off of his shelf. So Jennifer stands on a toy box to reach it for him. She says she turned around and she saw her father standing there with a really angry face. She says he grabbed her, slammed her against the wall with her feet above the floor, began yelling at her in her face. Then there's the tree branch. One memory is from when she's 11. Her parents handcuff her to the leg of her bed. Her father takes her bare legs and he begins hitting her with a tree branch until she bleeds. Once he's done, he takes rubbing alcohol and he pours it on her. But it doesn't stop there. She would be hit with belts, belt buckles, tree branches, and a rod that was made of fiberglass from a miniature ball pit. Louise would push her across the room, yank her hair, hit her with her knuckles or bottles, pinch her until she bled, told her when she died she was going straight to hell, and that's not even everything. As punishment, some of the children would be starved for as much as 3 days. They would buy apple pies, pumpkin pies, and pizza pies, and would make the children stare at the food, knowing full well that they would never be allowed to have any of it. The only water they were allowed to drink for a while was shower water. Jennifer was made to have her cat, Smokey, endure death by the family's multiple dogs because she drank her parents' apple juice. I'm not going to go into the story because it's just terrible. It is in the book. But she drank her parents' apple juice because she was made to drink dirty shower water. When she was 12, the Turpins locked her outside for the night. When she cried to her mother about how there's coyotes where they live and she was scared of being attacked by them, Louise responded to her, "One less thing to worry about." She was slapped for doing things as simple as smiling. She was constantly forced to sit and stare at the doors and the walls, not being allowed to touch anything. I also want to say as a side note, I know that there are a lot of Jennifer experiences, and that's because the majority of her book is about her and her experiences. In other words, the rest of them, it's not her story to tell, and she does not. So it would be wrong for me to assume that these things happen to all or more of the children without any confirmation, although it could be highly assumed that certain events were not solely the experience of Jennifer. No Christmas gifts. Medicine is not a priority for the Turpin parents. We see this in the police video, the 911 call, when first responders asked Jordan if her or any of her siblings take medicine, and her response to them is, "What is medicine?"
Anybody at the house take any kind of medication?
Oh, I don't know what medication
Any
is.
medicine?
When we have a cold, sometimes we take Robitussin.
Medication?
What's medication?
Medication?
Yeah, what's medication?
Do you take pills? Do you take pills?
Oh, I
For-
don't think I've ever taken a pill before.
Okay.
When Jennifer was 14, she had a terrible cold, and because medicine isn't a priority for Louise, Jennifer takes some expired cough drops to attempt with her cold and her throat. Because of this, David took away all of this 14-year-old child's Christmas gifts and forced her to watch her siblings open their gifts in front of her. Jennifer's gifts were open and probably kept by Louise. The Turpin home. The Turpin family was also living in absolute complete filth. The kids were knee-high in trash, mice, snakes, and bugs. When Jennifer was 12, she surprised her mother by cleaning the entire living room for her, okay? She's so proud of what a great job she has done and was sure that her mother would be so incredibly proud of her. But when Louise saw the job that her daughter had done, not only for her, but for the entire family, she got angry at her, she yelled at her, and she made her dump every single bag back out onto the floor.
I live in filth, and sometimes I wake up and I can't breathe because how dirty the house is.
So this just defies logic in every single way. And even if you were mad for some deranged reason because she didn't ask first, I'm guessing it was so weird. Dumping the bags crosses over to complete insanity for sure. For sure. Future career and husband. When Jennifer was 18, she was still a virgin. She had planned to stay that way until she was married. By this point in her life, she was not allowed to further her education, being told that she was going to be a housewife and that her husband would take care of her. So, first off, this was not the life that Jennifer wanted, especially because her one brother was allowed to go to school. He was allowed to take courses, but Louise would take him to school, wait for him, and then bring him back. So Jennifer wanted the same opportunities. She wanted a husband and a family, but she also wanted a career and an education. Should her husband suddenly die or for some reason not be able to take care of them? Okay, this makes perfect sense, right? And most parents, including myself, I would feel as if I'd done a pretty damn good job if my child came to me and told me this. But not David and Louise. They plan to set their 18-year-old up with the son of a friend of theirs who had a reputation of being a hard partier. Okay, so David and Louise tell Jennifer that they're going to take her to him, telling her that they'll pick her up later and also informing her that if she didn't have sex with him willingly, that he would probably end up R-wording her. I can't even wrap my freaking head around something like this. I can't. I am incredibly happy to report, though, that according to Jennifer's TikTok, she seems to have found the love of her life. She has gotten engaged and she is currently planning her wedding. She looks happy and healthy, and I am so incredibly happy for her. Jennifer's also candid about how after the family moved to Paris, California, the ABUSC on all of the children, minus the baby, would increase. They started off with ropes before moving on to chains and locks to restrain the children. California. After moving to California, the Turpin kids were allowed to leave the home more often. For a period of time, they were allowed to go play outside, jump rope, hula hoop, and the littles were allowed to go trick-or-treating for a few years. They traveled to Disney World.
Yeah, every time we went out, it was like pictures, everywhere. Pictures here, pictures there. Making us look like this one big happy family we're not. And then, the worst part was, bragging about us, acting like she, loved us.
Amusement parks, the zoo, San Francisco, Arizona, and attended 3 vow renewals for David and Louise in Las Vegas. Now I know what you're thinking. How dumb do you have to be to take 13 malnourished, dirty, filthy children with bruises all over them out into the community, right? Okay, well, the Turpins had that covered also. They told the children that they were not allowed to speak to anyone, warning them that if they had made even one mistake, that CPS would come and separate them forever. Jordan Turpin says, I thought that we would all go in different countries and I thought we would never see each other again. I thought that we would be put into cages, that they would starve us, and then as soon as we were 18, just throw us out on the street. Escape. Things had begun to get so bad in the Turpin home that for an entire 2 years, Jordan Turpin planned her escape from the home and the plot to save her siblings. Jordan and Jennifer worked on it together, and thank God that they did, because Jennifer told her sister to make sure she had pictures of things so that strangers would believe her.
Do you have pictures of that?
Yes, I can show you. I actually didn't have it, and then one of my sisters told me I need to get pictures.
Parents chained them up?
Yes, because they stole food.
Okay.
But they stole it because they were hungry.
Who took this picture?
I did. I took those pictures.
Okay. You make sure to save these, okay?
Okay, I will.
Don't get rid of those.
I will. I won't.
It would later be said that had she not had those pictures, police may have considered her another runaway and just brought her back home. On top of this, Jordan was 17 when she escaped, but she resembled a 10-year-old far more than she resembled a 17-year-old. And I say that to say that had she not had those pictures on her, officers would probably assume that she was a much younger child and brought her right back to the Turpin home. Okay, so the night in question. Thursday, January 18th, 2018 at 5:49 a.m., Jordan and her younger sibling are seen on neighborhood CCTV. The younger sister is seen turning around and running back home while Jordan Turpin is seen running off. Later saying, "If I was going to die, at least I was going to die trying." Jordan had left that night with one of her siblings' disconnected cell phones. Side note, by law, all cell phones must have the ability to call 911 even if they do not have a cellular carrier linked to them, as they should. Shaking profusely, Jordan dials 911. Mind you, she has never, ever spoken to strangers before, let alone police officers. While on the phone with 911, the first officer arrives. And wouldn't you know it, the officer asks Jordan if she has any proof of the claims that she's making. At one point, Jordan puts a ball cap on her head. This was said to serve as a reminder to Jordan of how her siblings were counting on her. The officer asks Jordan to get into the back seat of his squad car. She hesitates at first, but officers are promising her that they will not give her back to her parents and that she would not have to see them. Jordan says that she's scared for her parents to see her, saying that if they knew what she had done, they wouldn't hesitate to unalive her right there in front of the police. While the officer is in the vehicle with Jordan, she begins telling him even more disturbing things. He asks her, "Do you have any injuries?" "What's injuries? Are you hurt?" "Oh, no, not right now." "What are your parents going to do when they find out you left?" "Kill me." "What's the worst thing they've done to you?" They've choked me against the bed and..." "Did you call the police?" "No, I didn't have a way to get a phone yet. This was the first chance I've had a phone." "Oh, my brother's chained up too right now." "They're chained up?" "One of my brothers is chained up too." So it was two sisters and one brother chained up at the time. It's also important to note that the Turpin family would stay up all night and sleep all day, and that was the schedule the entire family was on. At 7:23 a.m., police head to the door of the Turpin residence. They would knock for 2 minutes and 10 seconds before David and Louise answered the door. Police tell them that they had an anonymous call from someone asking them to do a welfare check on the children.
Doing a welfare check?
Yeah.
You're obviously not open.
Hi.
You guys have kids in the house?
Yes. Okay, what kind of call did you get?
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
We were just in bed. I mean, like...
Come in and check, okay?
This is to protect Jordan, who, by the way, her parents still don't know are missing. Side note again, because they were potential children in danger, police did not need a warrant to enter the home. I would also like to assume that no court in the world would fault any officer for going into the home without a warrant, given what they had just seen and heard. And thank God they went in when they did, because the things that they found were unthinkable. The 13 children ranged in age from 2 to 29. The children were in dark and foul-smelling rooms. Police originally thought they had located 12 more children inside of the home, and they were shocked to find out that 7 of them were adults, ranging in age from 18 to 29. Child Protective Services and Adult Protective Services took the minor children to one hospital and took the adult children to a separate hospital. All of the children were admitted for medical treatment. Court documents from the hospital state that the children were so emaciated that they had trouble walking. They had stunted growth, heart damage from a lack of nutrients. One child, preteen age, had the arm size of a 4.5-month-old. Limited speech and language skills as well. On February 22nd, 2019, David and Louise Turpin pled guilty to 14 felony charges. On April 19th, 2019, the parents each received 25 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole. David Turpin's lawyer reads a letter on his behalf that says, "I never intended for any harm to come to my children. I hope the very best for my children in the future." Louise also reads a statement to the court on her behalf that says, I want to say I'm sorry for everything I've done. I love my children so much. I pray for my children every day. I'm truly sorry for everything I've done to hurt them. I love them more than they could ever imagine. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's not what a parent that loves their children does. I'm just letting you know that, okay? I have a little bit of experience. But that should be the end of the story, right? Not by a long shot. David Turpin today. A YouTuber by the name of L.A. Henna seems to have gotten some inside access to David's life in prison as of 2022. She claims to have gotten some inside information about his life and shared what she could in her video, which I will link below. Some things that stood out to me in her video included images of the cell at the protective housing unit where David Turpin is located. His next door cellmate is the Golden State. Yeah, that dude. The prison is one of the most highly protected prisons in California. David is at a level in the prison that very few ever get to see, but that many would do anything to be at, okay? They are protected from the majority of the inmates and given a fairly cushioned life considering their crimes. Charles Manson was one of these inmates, by the way. Why is it so disturbing? Because that means that other inmates are not given the opportunity to deal with David Turpin, as the majority of the world sees fit for somebody that has committed the crimes he eventually admitted to. He has access to television, grounds with urban flower gardens. He can exercise, go to school, and have a job. The older siblings would end up staying in the hospital for around 2 to 3 months. Then after their release, the oldest ones went to live in a house together for the next year. The younger siblings, they went to a foster family that was supposed to have been hand-picked for them. There were 9 foster... The younger foster kids went to a foster family. There were 9 foster kids in this family, including 5 Turpin children. Regardless of if this was a story about the Turpin children or not, it's just absolutely disgusting, and shame on Riverside, California and FosterNet, who are the ones that placed these children. In 2021, the foster family would find themselves in court for physical and psychological abuse for those 9 children that were in the house, which I don't quote me on if they were in the house at the same time, because then as it goes on, it seems that they were not in the house at the same time. 57-year-old Marcelino was charged with 4 counts of lewd acts on a minor, 3 counts of lewd acts on a minor younger than 14, false imprisonment with willful child cruelty. 57-year-old Rosa and 36-year-old Lenice were charged with false imprisonment, willful child cruelty, and dissuading a witness. In a lawsuit filed by the Turpin children, they said the foster care service placed them in the home knowing that prior children had been abused. They claimed the family hit them in the face with sandals, pulled their hair, hit them with belts, struck them on their heads, accused the family of telling them they were worthless and telling them to go unalive themselves, and accused the father of SA. It is said the ABUSC went on for 3 more years with these children until the first child was able to age out of the system and tell somebody what was going on. Disgusting. Like they haven't been through enough. Jordan Turpin went on to get her high school diploma from Orange Vista High School, and she plans to go on to college at some point to study motivational speaking in English, with hopes of writing her own memoir one day. She says she's always been incredibly into fashion and makeup and has even been given modeling opportunities. She's living on her own and has a rapidly growing TikTok career with 1.6 million followers at the time of filming this. She says that one of the first people that made her fall in love with the app was the ever-famous Charli D'Amelio, who Jordan would end up being able to collab with.
You don't know anything about your mother.
She was never here.
She was a beautiful, crazy, fragile, wonderful woman.
She deserted us.
She loved us.
That was love?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then why did she leave?
You don't know what you're talking
She
about.
loved us so much.
If you guys are still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet and you feel so inclined to, because it really helps me out and I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe out there.